And then in verse 17, they say unto the blind man again, What sayest thou of him, that he hath opened thine eyes? And then he said, He is a prophet. So he doesn't know, but he's assuming that Jesus is a prophet, which was someone who was sent from God. That's all a prophet was, is someone who was sent from God. And then verse 18, But the Jews did not believe concerning him, that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. So they didn't even believe. They're like, you know what? This man's lying. So they go to his parents and say, Is this your son who was born blind? So then in verse 19, they asked them, saying, Is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. So they're answering, they're confessing the truth, saying, This is our son, he was born blind. We don't know how he sees, but clearly he sees. And we know, we can confess and attest that this man was born blind because he's our son, right? And then in verse 21, his parents continue by saying, But by what means he now seeth, we know not, or who hath opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him, he shall speak for himself. And his parents spoke this way. In verse 22, these words spake his parents, because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. And so we see here, with the way the text is kind of illustrating this here, is his parents almost realize, like, this is Jesus, this is the Christ, this is why he's being healed, and this miracle happened. Because his parents, obviously knowing that he was born blind, realized this miracle is so crazy, and as we read in the text, it never happened before, that someone who was born blind was healed from sight, that they realized, like, this probably is the Christ. But they were too scared of the Pharisees because they didn't want to be put out of the synagogue and killed and persecuted for confessing this, because they already decided that they were going to do that to the people that did confess Jesus as the Christ. And so they said, you know what, our son's of age, he can speak for himself. Ask him, whatever he says, go with, right? So then in verse 23, therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. And so there's basically illustrating here that he's telling them to ask because they're scared that they will get killed if they confess that it is Christ who did that to him. And that's just based off their assumption. They don't even know that it was Christ, right?